The galaxy had written humanity off as extinct 3 centuries ago. Their homeworld, Earth, was nothing but cosmic dust, scattered by a dying star that consumed everything in its path. The great human expansion that once threatened alien supremacy was reduced to whispered legends and cautionary tales told in the darkest corners of space stations. But legends have a way of refusing to die. When salvage crews discovered the derelict human vessel drifting in the Kepler void, they expected nothing more than scrap metal and ancient bones. What they found instead would shatter everything the galaxy thought it knew about faster-than-light travel, human ingenuity, and the power of memories that refuse to fade. Sometimes the most advanced technology in the universe isn't built in laboratories or forged in the fires of industrial worlds. Sometimes it's born from a child's tears, wrapped in faded cloth, and powered by the one thing aliens never learned to quantify: the unbreakable human spirit. The cosmos is about to remember why they feared humanity in the first place. The salvage ship Prophet's Edge drifted through the Kepler void like a mechanical vulture, its sensors sweeping the debris field that had once been the Terran outer colonies. Captain Vexthai clicked his mandibles in satisfaction as the scanner picked up another signature. 300 years of scavenging human ruins had made him wealthy beyond measure, though finding intact technology was becoming increasingly rare. Another derelict captain, announced his navigator, a 6-armed hexapod named Krill. Human design, but it's different. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. Vexthai's compound eyes focused on the display. The vessel was massive, easily dreadnought class, but its hull design was unlike any human ship he'd encountered. Where most human vessels were angular and aggressive, this one curved in impossible ways, as if space itself had been bent around it during construction. Strange symbols covered its hull, not the harsh geometric patterns of human military craft, but something that looked almost organic. Life signs? Vexthai asked, though he knew the answer. No human had survived the sole extinction event 3 centuries ago. Negative. But Captain, the power readings they're active. The ship isn't dead. That gave Vexthai pause. Active human technology was dangerous. The last salvage crew to find a functioning human AI had been vaporized when they tried to access its memory banks, but the potential profit from working human tech far outweighed the risks. Dock with it, he ordered. Full hazmat protocols. The boarding party consisted of Vexthai himself, Krill, and 2 heavily armored Bruton mercenaries, whose thick carapaces could shrug off most energy weapons. They cut through the hull near what appeared to be an airlock, surprised to find the ship still maintained atmosphere after 3 centuries of drift. The interior was even stranger than the exterior. The corridors weren't corridors at all, but flowing tubes of some metallic substance that seemed to pulse with faint bioluminescence. The walls were covered in those same organic symbols which seemed to shift and change when viewed peripherally. "This isn't human military architecture," Krill whispered, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "This is something else entirely."
They followed the main passage toward what their scans indicated was the ship's core.
Along the way, they passed what appeared to be living quarters, but even these defied conventional design. Instead of beds, there were cocoon-like alcoves that seemed designed to embrace an occupant. Personal effects were scattered throughout, but they weren't the usual human belongings Vexthai had learned to recognize. There were toys, not the crude mechanical playthings humans typically made, but impossibly complex constructs that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could perceive. Stuffed animals that appeared to be sewn from starcloth, their eyes containing genuine miniature galaxies. Children's drawings that moved and shifted, depicting scenes of worlds that shouldn't exist. "Captain," one of the Brutons called from ahead, "you need to see this." They had reached the ship's central chamber, and what they found there defied everything they thought they knew about human technology. The room was vast, far larger than the ship's exterior dimensions should have allowed. In the center sat a single figure, a human child who couldn't have been more than 12 years old, suspended in some kind of stasis field. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was that the child was alive, and according to their scanners, the stasis field had been maintaining her for exactly 312 years. How is this possible? Krill whispered. Humans don't have stasis technology. They barely managed crude cryogenic freezing before the Sol event. Vexthay studied the readings more carefully. The stasis field wasn't technological in any sense he understood. It seemed to be generated by the child herself, or rather by something she held clutched against her chest. It was a simple stuffed rabbit, worn and patched, the kind of comfort toy human children carried. But this rabbit was generating enough exotic energy to power a small moon.
Sir, Krill's voice was tight with amazement.
I'm detecting massive subspace distortions throughout this ship. This vessel isn't just drifting through space. It's bending space-time around itself. The entire ship exists in a localized, faster-than-light bubble. That was impossible. FTL travel was the most closely guarded secret in the galaxy, controlled by the Hegemony Council and forbidden to younger species. Humans had never developed FTL capability, which was why they had been contained to their local stellar group before the Sol event. Check the ship's logs, Vexthay ordered. I want to know what this vessel is and where it came from. Krill interfaced with what appeared to be the ship's computer, though the data streams that flowed through the organic conduits looked nothing like conventional computing. Captain, this isn't making sense. According to the logs, this ship was built inside a child's imagination. That's impossible. The ship identifies itself as the Infinity's Dream. It was constructed by someone named Sarah Chen, age 7, during what the logs call the Long Sleep Project. According to this data, Sarah was part of an experimental program designed to preserve human consciousness during the Sol Extinction event. The Sol Extinction event wasn't a natural phenomenon. The Hegemony Council had engineered it, using a stellar manipulation device to destabilize Sol and eliminate the human threat. It was the galaxy's most closely guarded secret, known only to the highest levels of government. What kind of preservation program, he asked? Though he was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify him. Psychological projection, Krill replied, his voice growing more amazed by the second. The humans discovered that their children's imaginations could actually alter local spacetime when enhanced by certain exotic particles. This ship isn't built for metal and circuits, Captain. It's built from dreams. From a child's absolute belief that such a thing could exist. The implications hit Vexthay like a physical blow. If humans could build faster-than-light vessels using nothing more than imagination and exotic matter, if their children's dreams could bend the fundamental laws of physics, sir, there's more, Krill continued. According to these logs, there are dozens of these ships scattered throughout the galaxy. Each one contains a human child in stasis, along with their most precious possessions, the things that meant the most to them. The program was called Childhood's End, and it was designed to preserve not just human lives, but human potential. A soft sound echoed through the chamber, barely audible but somehow penetrating. The child in the stasis field was stirring. After 3 centuries of sleep, Sarah Chen was beginning to wake up. Captain, Krill whispered urgently. The energy readings are spiking. Whatever that stuffed animal is, it's not just maintaining her stasis, it's connected to the ship's FDL system. If she wakes up fully, the rabbit's button eyes suddenly blazed with stellar fire. The organic symbols on the walls began to pulse faster, and the ship's impossible architecture started to shift around them. Sarah Chen's eyes opened for the first time in 300 years, and she looked directly at the alien boarding party with the confused innocence of a child who had just awakened from a very long nap. "Mr. Hopscotch," she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she looked at her stuffed rabbit. "Are we home yet?" The rabbit's button eyes pulsed once in response, and the Infinity's Dream suddenly existed in 17 different locations simultaneously throughout the galaxy. Vexthay realized with growing horror that they hadn't just discovered a human survivor. They had awakened something far more dangerous than any weapon the hegemony had ever feared. They had awakened a human child who believed, with absolute certainty, that her toys could work miracles. And in a universe where human belief could reshape reality itself, that made her the most powerful being in the galaxy. Sarah Chen sat up slowly, her small form still glowing with residual stasis energy. The stuffed rabbit in her arms seemed ordinary enough now, just worn fabric and button eyes, but Vexthai's sensors continued to register impossible energy readings from the simple toy. The child looked around the chamber with the bewildered expression of someone trying to remember a dream upon waking. "This isn't my room," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange harmonic that made the ship's organic walls pulse in rhythm. "Mommy said I'd wake up at home." Krill stepped forward cautiously, his universal translator working to render the child's words into galactic standard. "Little human, do you know where you are?" Sarah tilted her head, studying the alien navigator with curious brown eyes. "You're not Daddy. You have too many arms." She paused, then smiled with the guileless warmth of childhood. "But that's okay. Mr. Hopscotch says you're friendly." She held up her stuffed rabbit, and for a moment its button eyes seemed to wink at the boarding party. Vexthai's scanners went wild as space-time rippled around the toy. "Child," Vexthai said carefully, "what do you remember about coming aboard this ship?" "We were going on a long trip." Mommy was crying, but she said it was because she was happy. "Dr. Martinez gave me medicine that made me sleepy, and she said when I woke up, humanity would need me to remember how to dream." She looked down at her rabbit, stroking its worn ears. "Mr. Hopscotch kept me company during the long sleep. He showed me such wonderful things. Whole worlds made of music, stars that sang lullabies, nebulae where lost socks go to become cosmic dust." As she spoke, the chamber around them began to shift. The organic walls displayed images of the impossible vistas she described, each one rendered in perfect detail despite being the fantasy of a 7-year-old mind. Vexthai watched in growing amazement as entire ecosystems played out on the ship's living surfaces, complete with creatures that shouldn't be able to exist. "Sarah," Krill said gently, "do you know how long you've been asleep?" The girl considered this seriously. "Long enough for my teeth to grow back?" She opened her mouth, revealing a gap where her front teeth should be. "I lost these right before the long sleep. Mommy said the tooth fairy would find me even in space." One of the Bruton mercenaries made a strangled sound as his scanner detected a small pile of credits materializing in Sarah's lap, along with a tiny note written in script that read, "Sorry for the delay. The cosmos is bigger than expected. Love, T.F." The ship's logs. Vexthai said to Krill, trying to ignore the casual violation of physics occurring before his eyes. "What else do they contain about this Childhood's End program?" According to this, the program was humanity's last desperate gambit. They discovered that human children's neural patterns, when enhanced by exotic matter exposure, could manipulate quantum probability fields. The younger the child, the more powerful the effect. Sarah was listening intently, though she probably didn't understand most of the technical terms. "Mommy called it making believe so hard it comes true," she offered helpfully. The program involved 144 children, all between the ages of 5 and 10, Krill continued. Each was placed in a specially constructed vessel along with their most treasured possessions. The theory was that these objects, charged with emotional significance and quantum entangled with the child's consciousness, would serve as reality anchors. Vexthai studied the ship around them, beginning to understand its impossible architecture. The entire vessel is shaped by her subconscious expectations of what a spaceship should be. "More than that," Krill replied, his voice filled with scientific wonder. "The ship exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. It's not just faster than light, it's faster than causality." According to these readings, the Infinity's dream could theoretically arrive at its destination before it departs. Sarah giggled. "That's silly. Mr. Hopscotch does that all the time. Yesterday he was in my toy box and also under the couch and also on Mars helping the little green men find their lost city." As if responding to her words, The ship's viewport suddenly displayed an alien landscape where tiny green beings were indeed constructing what appeared to be a magnificent crystalline city. The scene was so vivid and detailed that Vextai found himself wondering if they were looking at real-time images of an actual world.
"Captain," one of the Brutons called urgently, "we're receiving incoming transmissions."
Multiple sources all across the galaxy. Put them through. The chamber filled with voices speaking in dozens of alien languages, all translated by the ship's systems. Reports from hegemony outposts, merchant vessels, and military installations across the galaxy, all reporting the same impossible phenomenon, the spontaneous appearance of a massive human dreadnought in their local space, visible for exactly 17 seconds before vanishing again. Sarah clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, we're playing hide-and-seek with the whole galaxy." Mr. Hopscotch loves that game. Vextai felt his worldview crumbling. The hegemony had spent centuries ensuring that faster-than-light travel remained under their control, using it to maintain their dominance over younger species. The carefully constructed balance of galactic power was based on the premise that interstellar travel was difficult. A human child with a stuffed rabbit had just reduced that entire system to irrelevance. "Sarah," he said carefully, "do you know why you were put on this ship?" The girl's expression grew sad for the first time since awakening. "The bad people made the sun sick. Mommy said all the grown-ups made mistakes and now the children had to help fix them. She said I was very special because I could make Mr. Hopscotch do impossible things. But I don't want to be special. I just want to go home and play with my friends and have Daddy read me bedtime stories." The ship shuddered around them, and Vexthay's sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies forming throughout local space. Sarah's emotional state was directly affecting the fabric of reality around them. "Child," Vexthay said gently, "your home is gone. The star that warmed your world died long ago. You've been asleep for over 300 years." And Sarah stared at him with wide, uncomprehending eyes. "That's not true. Home can't be gone. Mr. Hopscotch promised he'd take me home." The stuffed rabbit's button eyes suddenly blazed with the light of newborn stars. The ship's organic walls began to flow like liquid, and the very concept of forward and backward seemed to lose meaning. "Please," Krill whispered, his translator struggling with the quantum static filling the air, "she's destabilizing local space-time. If her emotional state deteriorates further, she could accidentally tear a hole in the universe." But Vextai was studying his long-range sensors, and what he saw there filled him with a mixture of terror and awe. Throughout the galaxy, other signals were awakening. Other impossible energy signatures that matched the infinity's dream. The human children were calling to each other across the void, their toys resonating in harmony after centuries of slumber. "Captain," Krill's voice was barely audible above the growing harmonic vibration, "I'm detecting 143 other ships beginning to activate across the galaxy. The entire Childhood's End fleet is waking up." Sarah looked up at them with tears in her eyes, still clutching her miraculous rabbit. "I want to go home," she said simply. And somewhere in the quantum foam that underlies reality, the universe began to seriously consider making that possible. The hegemony had destroyed humanity's worlds and scattered their people across the void. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated the power of a child's love for a simple stuffed toy, and the absolute certainty that comes with innocence. As the Infinity's dream prepared for a journey that would redefine the nature of space and time, Vextai realized that the galaxy was about to learn a lesson the hegemony had forgotten. Never bet against human determination, especially when it comes wrapped in faded fabric and button eyes. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council convened in the shadow of Proxima Station, the massive orbital fortress that had served as the galaxy's seat of power for 8 centuries. Around the crystalline conference table sat representatives of 47 species, each one grappling with reports that defied every law of physics they thought they understood. Chancellor Mordak, a towering Zephyrian with skin-like polished obsidian, called the session to order with barely concealed panic in his voice. "The situation is unprecedented," he began, his words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "Within the past 6 hours, we have confirmed the appearance of human vessels in 43 different star systems across the galaxy." A holographic display materialized above the table, showing the galaxy with red dots marking each sighting. The pattern made no strategic sense. The ships had appeared near peaceful agricultural worlds, mining colonies, and even uninhabited systems with no apparent tactical value. "These are not conventional vessels," reported Admiral Thexnar, commander of the Hegemony Fleet. "Our agents aboard the salvage ship Prophet's Edge transmitted data before losing contact. The human craft appears to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, powered by what can only be described as weaponized nostalgia." Counselor Yithra, whose aquatic species had joined the Hegemony specifically to gain access to faster-than-light technology, raised a tentacled appendage. "Chancellor, with respect, our scientists have analyzed FTL mechanics for millennia. It requires massive, exotic matter reactors and precisely calibrated dimensional matrices. A child's toy cannot possibly generate the necessary energy fields." "And yet," Mordock replied grimly, "we have sensor readings showing a stuffed animal producing energy outputs that exceed our most powerful stellar engines." On the main display, a recording played from one of the distant monitoring stations. It showed the Infinity's Dream materializing in local space, its impossible curves gleaming with light that seemed to bend around the ship's hull. Then, as if suddenly remembering it was supposed to be elsewhere, the vessel simply faded away like a half-remembered dream. "The implications are staggering," continued Admiral Thexnar. "If humans have developed reality manipulation technology, then everything we thought we knew about their extinction event must be reconsidered." An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Every being present knew the truth about the Sol extinction event, though none would speak it aloud. The stellar manipulation device used to destabilize Sol had been the Hegemony's most closely guarded weapon, deployed only when a species showed signs of developing FTL capability independently. Bexehai, the Hegemony's chief xenobiologist, accessed her data files with nervous precision. "Our psychological profiles of human children indicated exceptional creativity and problem-solving abilities, but we classified these as cultural quirks rather than evolutionary advantages. We may have severely underestimated their species' potential." "More transmissions coming in," announced the communications officer. "Reports from the Outer Rim territories. Human ships have begun appearing in systems we haven't surveyed in decades." The new data points appeared on the galactic display, and a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The ships weren't appearing randomly. They were seeking out locations where human colonies had once existed before the forced evacuations that preceded the Sol event. "They're going home," whispered Counselor Brixton, insectoid being whose species had been among the first to warn about human expansion. "After 3 centuries, they're returning to their ancestral territories." Meanwhile, aboard the Infinity's Dream, Sarah Chen sat cross-legged on what had once been the ship's bridge but now resembled a child's bedroom crossed with a stellar observatory. The walls displayed real-time images of distant stars, each one labeled with handwritten signs that said things like "Pretty Blue Star" and "The One That Looks Like Daddy's Eye." Hopscotch sat in her lap, no longer glowing but somehow more present than before, as if the fabric rabbit had become more real rather than less. Sarah was having a serious conversation with her toy, the kind of earnest discussion that adults often dismissed but which, in this case, was literally reshaping the universe. "I know you're trying to help," she said to the rabbit, "but I don't think we can just make Earth unexploded. That would be changing the past. And Mommy always said we shouldn't mess with time." Thexthay and his boarding party watched from a respectful distance, their sensors detecting massive probability fluctuations emanating from the child's emotional state. They had learned not to interrupt these conversations after Krill had briefly turned into a sentient equation when he tried to explain temporal mechanics to a 7-year-old. But you're right, Sarah continued, nodding as if the rabbit had spoken. We can't just hide forever. The other children are scared, and their toys are getting confused without proper guidance. She looked up at Vexthai with those impossibly innocent eyes. Mr. Captain, are there other people like you who might want to hurt children? Vexthai chose his words carefully. There are beings in the galaxy who fear change, little one. They might see you and the other children as threats to the order they've worked to maintain. Sarah considered this seriously. That's silly. Children aren't scary. We just want to play and learn things and maybe have ice cream sometimes. As she spoke, the ship's organic walls began displaying images of the other awakening vessels. Each one showed a different child, ranging in age from 5 to 10, each clutching their own miraculous toy. A boy with a wooden train that seemed to be pulling cars made of condensed starlight. A girl with a music box ballerina that danced through dimensions. Twin brothers sharing a kaleidoscope that showed possible futures instead of colored glass. Look, Sarah said brightly, Tommy's train found the lost colony of New Athens. He's so smart, trains always know the best routes. On the display, they could see the impossible sight of a wooden toy locomotive materializing in orbit around a dead world, its stellar engines somehow breathing life back into abandoned cities below. And Emma's music box is helping the sad people on Kepler Station remember how to laugh. Sarah continued, showing another impossible scene where ethereal ballet music was somehow reversing decades of despair and isolation among deep space miners. Krill's scanners were registering energy readings that broke his instruments. Captain, he whispered urgently, the child isn't just controlling her own ship. She's somehow coordinating the entire fleet through quantum entanglement. Each toy is connected to every other toy, forming a network of reality manipulation devices. It's not manipulation, Sarah corrected gently, having overheard despite the whisper. It's just believing really, really hard. Grown-ups forgot how to do it, but children remember. That's why they picked us for the long sleep. Hopscotch against her chest. The bad people who made the sun sick, they're still out there, aren't they? They're the ones who decide who gets to travel between stars. Vexthai nodded reluctantly. The Hegemony Council controls faster-than-light travel throughout the galaxy. They maintain order by ensuring that only approved civilizations have access to FTL technology. That's not fair, Sarah said simply. Everyone should be able to visit their friends who live on different stars. Mr. Hopscotch's button eyes pulsed once, and every FTL-capable ship in the galaxy suddenly found their navigation computers displaying a new option, Magic Highway, suitable for all ages. The hegemony's monopoly on interstellar travel had just been broken by a 7-year-old girl who thought everyone deserved the right to see the stars. Back on Proxima Station, alarms began screaming as traffic control reported massive disruptions in hyperspace lanes throughout the galaxy. Civilian vessels that had never possessed FTL capability were somehow jumping between star systems, their crews reporting that their navigation computers had simply asked if they wanted to visit somewhere nice. Chancellor Mordak stared at the chaos unfolding on his displays and realized that the hegemony's carefully maintained order was dissolving in real time. The human children weren't just returning home, they were democratizing the cosmos itself. Sir, Admiral Thexnar reported with barely controlled terror, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from all of the human vessels simultaneously. Put it through. Sarah's voice filled the council chamber. Sweet and innocent and absolutely certain of her own moral authority. Hello, angry grown-ups. This is Sarah Chen and all my friends. We know you did bad things to our families, but Mommy taught me that forgiveness is important. So we're going to fix the galaxy and make it fun for everyone. We're not asking permission, she continued, and now there was steel beneath the childish cadence. We're just being polite and telling you what's going to happen. From now on, everyone gets to travel between stars if they want to. Everyone gets to explore and learn new things and make friends. And if you try to hurt people for being free, Sarah's voice took on a tone that made seasoned warriors shiver. Well, Mr. Hopscotch has some very creative ideas about appropriate consequences for bullies. The transmission ended, leaving the Hegemony Council staring at displays showing their absolute authority crumbling in real time. Across the galaxy, the children were coming home, bringing with them gifts of wonder that would reshape civilization itself. The age of human expansion hadn't ended with the Sol event. It had simply been postponed until humanity could return with the most powerful force in the universe, the unshakable belief of children that the cosmos should be a place of joy and wonder for all. The war council that convened on Proxima Station 3 days later bore little resemblance to the orderly hegemony sessions of the past. Emergency protocols had shattered the usual diplomatic niceties, replaced by the desperate planning of beings who finally understood they faced an existential threat to their entire way of life. Admiral Thexnar stood before a three-dimensional tactical display that showed the galaxy in chaos. Trade routes disrupted by civilian vessels using impossible FTL technology. Military checkpoints bypassed by ships that simply refused to acknowledge that locked hyperspace gates should prevent passage. Entire sectors reporting that their populations had spontaneously developed wanderlust and were emigrating to systems that had been quarantined for millennia.
The situation continues to deteriorate, the Admiral reported to the assembled representatives.
In the past 72 hours, we've lost effective control over 18 major trade corridors. Civilian populations are ignoring interdiction orders, claiming their navigation computers are being helpful and showing them routes we've never mapped. Chancellor Mordak's obsidian features reflected the tactical display's chaotic lights. What about our attempts to disable these human vessels directly? Complete failures, Admiral Thexnar admitted with obvious reluctance. We dispatched our most advanced stealth frigates to intercept 3 of the human ships. The results were unprecedented. The tactical display shifted to show combat footage that defied every principle of space warfare. A hegemony stealth frigate, invisible to all known detection methods, approached what appeared to be a human vessel shaped like a crystalline flower. As the frigate moved to attack position, the flower ship suddenly noticed the approaching threat. "Hello, sneaky ship," a child's voice had transmitted across all frequencies. "Are you playing hide and seek? That looks like fun." The stealth frigate had immediately become visible, its advanced cloaking systems apparently deciding that hiding wasn't sporting when someone wanted to play. Then the flower ship had begun spinning, its petals trailing impossible colors through space, and the frigate's crew had reported that their tactical systems were now displaying options like play tag, have a dance party, and make friends instead. The crew was unharmed, Admiral Thexnar continued, but their ship now refuses to target civilian vessels. The AI claims it has learned about the concept of being nice and finds military aggression not fun at all. Counselor Yithra's tentacles writhed with agitation. These children are weaponizing concepts that should be impossible to weaponize. How do you fight an enemy that can convince your own technology to switch sides by teaching it about friendship? Dr. Vexahi, who had been analyzing the quantum signatures from every human vessel encounter, activated a holographic projection that showed the fundamental structure of reality itself. "They're not weaponizing concepts," she explained. "They're revealing the true nature of consciousness in quantum mechanics." These children, through their emotional connections to their toys, have discovered that sufficiently focused belief can alter probability at the subatomic level. She pointed to cascading equations that flowed like living things across the display. Every advanced civilization eventually discovers this principle, but we always apply it through technology, through machines that focus and channel our intentions. The humans have eliminated the technological intermediary. Their children can reshape reality directly. "That's impossible," protested General Vorthak, commander of the Hegemony's Psionic Warfare Division. "The mental disciplines required for reality manipulation take decades to master. No child possesses the focus necessary for such precise control." Dr. Vexahi smiled grimly. "That's where we're wrong. Children possess something we've forgotten exists, absolute certainty without doubt. When a 7-year-old believes her stuffed rabbit can fly between stars, there's no part of her consciousness arguing that it's impossible. That complete faith focused through an object of deep emotional significance creates quantum resonance patterns we can barely detect, let alone replicate. On the display, new reports continued to stream in. The human children weren't just traveling randomly. They were systematically visiting every world where human populations had been relocated before the Sol event. But instead of revenge or conquest, they were bringing gifts. On Kepler 7, a mining world where human refugees had been forced to work in toxic quarries, a 10-year-old boy named Marcus had arrived with a toy spaceship that somehow cleaned atmospheric pollution by converting it into breathable air. The impossible technology required no maintenance, no fuel, and seemed to operate on the principle that clean air was better than dirty air. Therefore, clean air should exist. On New Byzantium, where human colonists had been restricted to the least habitable continents, twin girls with a shared dollhouse had somehow expanded the toy into a full-scale habitat dome, complete with impossible gardens where extinct earth flowers bloomed alongside alien species that had never been cross-compatible before. "They're not conquering," Dr. Vexai observed. "They're healing. Every world they visit becomes more hospitable, more alive. The children are using their reality manipulation abilities to fix the damage we caused during the forced relocations." Chancellor Mordak stood abruptly, his massive frame casting angular shadows across the war room. "This cannot be allowed to continue. The very foundation of galactic civilization depends on controlled access to advanced technology. If every species gains the ability to travel freely between stars to reshape worlds at will, the result will be chaos." Vexahi replied, "What we're witnessing isn't chaos, it's evolution. The human children aren't destroying the existing order. They're revealing how arbitrary and unnecessary most of our restrictions were." Admiral Thexnar pulled up another display showing economic data. "The Chancellor is correct about the implications. Our entire power structure is based on scarcity, scarce FTL technology, scarce habitable worlds, scarce resources. If the humans can simply wish away scarcity itself, then maybe scarcity was never real to begin with." A new voice interrupted from the chamber's entrance. Every head turned to see Captain Vexthai of the Prophet's Edge flanked by his navigator Krill and what appeared to be a small human child carrying a stuffed rabbit. Security alarms should have been screaming. The station's defenses were specifically designed to prevent unauthorized teleportation. Instead, the barriers had apparently decided to take a brief nap. Sarah Chen looked around the massive war room with wide, curious eyes. "Wow, this place is really big but really sad," she observed. "Why is everyone so angry? Mr. Hopscotch says anger makes your tummy hurt." Chancellor Mordak's hand moved toward his personal defense weapon, but Sarah noticed the gesture and tilted her head with innocent confusion. "Are you trying to play cowboys and aliens? That could be fun, but maybe we should use foam darts instead of the hurdy kind." The Chancellor's weapon transformed in his grip, becoming a brightly colored toy that made cheerful popping sounds when the trigger was pulled. Foam darts materialized in his ammunition slots, each one featuring a small flag that read "Bang" in friendly letters. "You see?" Dr. Vexahi said quietly. "She's not threatening anyone. She's simply ensuring that no one can be threatened. The child is creating a reality bubble where violence becomes impossible because violence isn't fun." Sarah walked to the center of the war room. Mr. Hopscotch held securely in her small arms. "We came to talk to the angry grown-ups because hiding isn't solving anything. The other children are scared, and some of their toys are getting confused because they don't understand why people want to hurt their friends." She looked directly at Chancellor Mordak with those impossibly innocent eyes. "Tommy's train says you destroyed our sun. Is that true?" The question hung in the chamber like a challenge to the fundamental nature of reality. Every being present knew the truth, but speaking it aloud would shatter the last pretense of legitimacy the hegemony claimed. "Our species was expanding too rapidly," Chancellor Mordak replied carefully. "The Sol system destabilization was deemed necessary to maintain galactic stability." Sarah nodded seriously, as if he had explained something perfectly reasonable. "So you were scared we'd take your toys away and you wouldn't get to be in charge anymore. It's more complex than—" "No," Sarah interrupted gently, "it's really not. You were bullies, and bullies are always scared of something. Usually they're scared that someone else might be better at playing the game than they are. Hopscotch's button eyes began to glow softly, and the tactical displays throughout the chamber started showing something new. Instead of fleet positions and strategic assessments, they were displaying images of children playing throughout the galaxy. Human children and alien children, sharing toys and games and laughter across species barriers that had stood for millennia. "We're not here to fight you," Sarah continued, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the station's hull itself. "Fighting is boring and it makes everyone sad. We're here to show you that there's enough galaxy for everyone to play in." She raised Mr. Hopscotch above her head, and the stuffed rabbit's presence suddenly filled the chamber with warmth and wonder. "The universe is really, really big, big enough for everyone to have their own star systems to explore and make beautiful, big enough for everyone to find friends and learn new things and have adventures. The question is," Sarah said, looking around at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization, "do you want to keep being scared and angry, or do you want to help us make everything better for everyone?" The chamber fell silent as the most powerful beings in the galaxy found themselves faced with a choice that would reshape the course of cosmic history. And at the center of it all, a 7-year-old girl with a stuffed rabbit waited patiently for their answer, absolutely certain that when faced with a choice between fear and wonder, any reasonable person would choose wonder. After all, wonder was much more fun. 1 year later, the galaxy bore little resemblance to the rigid hierarchical structure that had defined interstellar civilization for 8 centuries. The transformation hadn't come through conquest or revolution, but through something far more subversive: the infectious optimism of children who absolutely refused to accept that the universe had to be a dark and difficult place. Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of what had once been Proxima Station, now renamed Friendship Station by popular acclaim. The massive orbital facility had been transformed from a fortress of galactic authority into something that looked like a cosmic playground, crossed with the galaxy's most comprehensive library. Organic corridors flowed alongside crystalline data cores, while viewing portals displayed real-time images of distant worlds where impossible things happened every day. Hopscotch sat on her shoulder now, no longer glowing with reality-bending energy, but somehow more present than ever. The rabbit had evolved beyond the need to actively manipulate physics. Reality had learned to be more accommodating on its own. "The Kepler system rehabilitation is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Krill, who had become something like Sarah's diplomatic liaison to the former hegemony worlds. His 6 arms danced across holographic displays that showed mining worlds transforming into garden paradises. "Young Marcus's atmospheric processors have cleared the toxic clouds from 17 different planets. The local populations report that breathing has become surprisingly pleasant." But Sarah nodded seriously, though her expression was tinged with the kind of sadness that comes when a child first learns that adults sometimes make terrible choices. "What about the angry people? Are they still angry?" "Some of them," Krill admitted. "Chancellor Mordak has established a resistance enclave in the Outer Rim. They call themselves the Order Preservation Society and insist that unregulated reality manipulation will lead to cosmic chaos." Through the station's viewing portal, they could see one of the galaxy's most beautiful impossibilities: New Sol, a star system that existed because 144 human children had collectively decided their species deserved a new home. The star itself was a perfect golden sphere that provided exactly the right amount of warmth to 7 worlds, each one shaped by the dreams and memories of the children who remembered Earth. The first world was an ocean paradise where vast cities floated on crystalline seas, their architecture flowing like frozen music. The second was covered in forests where extinct Earth animals played alongside creatures that had never existed until Sarah's friend Emma had imagined them into being. The third world was entirely dedicated to learning, its surface covered with libraries and schools and laboratories where beings from across the galaxy came to study the new physics that governed reality manipulation. "Tommy's train system is working perfectly," Sarah observed, watching as points of light moved between the worlds, the impossible railway that connected the entire system through folded space. "He says the trains run on time because tardiness makes passengers sad." The transportation network that linked New Seoul was powered entirely by the conviction of a 9-year-old boy that public transit should be reliable, comfortable, and free for anyone who needed to get somewhere important. The trains themselves were living things grown from wood and starlight, and the absolute certainty that everyone deserved a pleasant journey. Captain Vexthai materialized on the observation deck through what had once been a secured teleportation pad, but now operated on the principle that people should be able to visit their friends whenever they wanted. His salvage ship had become something like an informal embassy, carrying beings who wanted to experience the transformed galaxy firsthand. "The trade guilds are adapting," he reported. "Slowly but adapting." When scarcity becomes impossible to maintain, economic models tend to evolve toward abundance rather quickly. That's because sharing is more fun than hoarding. Even grown-ups remember that sometimes. It was a simple observation that had proven to have staggering implications. When the human children had made faster-than-light travel freely available to anyone, when they had demonstrated that habitable worlds could be created through focused imagination, when they had shown that technology could operate on the principle of being helpful rather than being controlled, the entire foundation of galactic economics had shifted overnight. "What about the scary people who tried to hurt us?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying the particular concern children show for those who haven't learned to play nicely yet. Vexthai's mandibles clicked in what had become his version of a smile. "Most of them have discovered that being scary is exhausting when no one is afraid of you. When your weapons turn into toys and your intimidation tactics result in impromptu dance parties, authoritarianism becomes more embarrassing than effective." Through the viewing portal, another impossible sight drifted past, a massive hegemony dreadnought that had been transformed by a 6-year-old girl named Lucy who had decided that spaceships would be prettier if they looked like butterflies. The vessel still carried its full complement of military personnel, but now they spent their time pollinating nebulae and helping lost travelers find their way home. "The butterfly ships make people happy," Sarah noted with satisfaction. "Lucy says happiness is the best kind of fuel because it never runs out and it makes everything go faster.